We were talking before why it's so important for a business owner who has a storefront or an office building. It's important for them to have an annual or biannual maintenance plan.
Yes, absolutely, because you want to keep your customers on the forefront, and that curb appeal is everything. Every time they come up to your store or storefront, you want them to think of it being a nice place to come to, and the more that you...
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Property Pros Podcast. I'm your host. I'm Peter LaFramboise. I'm a public insurance adjuster with Gold Star Adjusters. And we got a good one. We got my guy on here from BNI, Chris Hiesler, Professor Powerwash. And we were talking off air right before we got on this. I didn't know this. You might have talked about it in the meeting. It was too early. I wasn't paying attention. But Chris said his career before starting the power washing business was an air traffic controller. So you can imagine the stress and the level of detail. And so he talked about his retirement and wanting to stay busy. And so I thought he'd make for a good guest. I wanted to bring him on this episode, share his story. Chris, I think that is a really interesting background. Why don't you give us and our audience a little taste of why did you decide to spend your retirement starting to do this kind of work? Why, keeps you busy and makes you happy? Tell us about yourself.
Well, one of the biggest things for me is I always like to, very customer oriented, even in air traffic. We were trying to make the customers happy and do the best that we could with the resources that we had. Always had quite an attention to detail, and when retirement came, I had to find something to do, and came up with some ideas, and this one kind of came to the front on a way to get out there and kind of choose my own schedule and work directly with customers and be able to say, hey, I can really help you and help with your home. Because so many people, aside from their jobs and their families, it's their homes that are important. And if there's a way to beautify that, they don't always want to do it or know how to do it. So I thought it'd be a really cool thing to say, hey, I can really help you out with that. And my attention to detail from the past will make it a good experience for you.
I bet it does. In fact, I like a good power washing at my house. It's a real pain in the butt to do it. We got a lot going on.
Yeah.
Think about this. On my house, I have a concrete pool deck. I got a screen enclosure. We've got areas where you get high algae growth and then lots of sun. Tell us about some of the steps or chemicals you might use for whatever different types of things that you're seeing on a day-to-day basis.
Well, and that's what every job starts with, is the estimate to go out and say, what am I dealing with? What kinds of surfaces do you have first and foremost? Do you have travertine? Do you have pavers? Do you have concrete? What is your surface? And then what is on your surface? Is it algae? Is it rust? Is it calcium deposits that have come up from the stones and the ground? Did you get oil on your driveway? Each one of those, there's a range of products, and there's a lot of products on the market. I'm partnering myself with the Trident brand of products because I love their customer support. That's a whole another topic in and of itself. But there's a lot of different products that we can end up using for those specific things. So again, every job depends on that analysis of what's there, and there's a specific product to address every issue that we see.
Well, what about, let's just use my house, for example. Can I seal the concrete on that pool deck? It's been poured for 15 or 16 years, and we kind of get the same spots that get worn out with the dripping from the gutters. And
absolutely. Those are all good questions and good things to address too. With any kind of surface, one, you have to make sure that it's solid enough. If it's deteriorating too much, you can maybe do more damage than necessary. But assuming it's in a good enough condition, which the vast majority are, so it's a rare occasion. Once it's cleaned properly, you can put sealers on asphalt, concrete, pavers, just different sealers for different products, and those will help mitigate those stains from coming back. They may come back, but they're now going to be easier for you to get up or have somebody like me come in and clean that up again for you and then reapply as time goes on.
So we're cutting down on the amount of maintenance, huh?
Absolutely. Maintenance is huge. Any mess that you make, you can clean up much easier. And then if somebody like me has to come back, then it becomes easier for our job also to get it back to where it needs to be.
So do you guys have services like, whether it be a house or a business, have you started to develop products for maintenance plans for them, where you maybe, depending on how many trees or whatever they got going on, you go like once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year?
There are maintenance plans available, and that is tailored to fit the customer. Like, for example, on our paver ceiling, the ceiling itself is every 3 years, plus or minus, and in Florida it's 3 years because the product can go 3 to 5, but we have so much humidity, and like you were talking about the algae buildup, it's just better to do it every 3. But if we get on that, say, every 3 months, every 6 months, then it tends to cut down on the long-term cost.
All right, well, good stuff. I mean, yeah, it seems like my pool deck, as soon as I clean it, I'm within a few months. This drives me nuts. That and the screen lanai. Let's talk about the ceiling of the pavers, though. I mean, more specifically, is there a range of cost you can do on that, or is there a lot of factors that go into how you price that particular product?
So it's a complicated answer to that, and there's a range, one, depending on your market, where you are. Like here in Florida, we have a particular range per square foot that we work with, and then within that, it depends on, okay, well, what kind of paver are we dealing with, right? Because I have a different process that I use with a brick paver as opposed to, say, travertine, right? In addition to that, it's what's the current condition? Are there repairs needed? And what is the customer's goal as to what they want to accomplish with the look? Because we can have different sheen levels from a kind of a satin look to a semi-gloss and all the way to a high gloss. So, and that just means the more glossier it is, the more product that we're using. So that does affect the cost. So as much as I'd love to say, oh, it'll be $1,000 to $2,000, or whatever the case may be, just depends on the size of the job and the condition of it as we get there and what chemicals are going to be used, and then the ultimate goal of the customer's desires.
All right. Well,
It's very custom
question, right? Because there's
very custom.
All right. So, we are also talking a little bit off air. How important is it for these people that are property managers or CAMs of storefronts to have guys like you on their speed dial? I mean, it makes a big difference when I go to a store and it's clean. My wife notices, I notice.
Peter, and that's a great point. It is so crucial in that every store, people coming up, whether it's a repeat customer or a new customer, it's that first impression that always gets their attention. And you don't want that customer to go, oh, well, they're not taking care of the outside. How are they going to take care of me? Is the food going to be good? Is the product going to be good? Is it going to last? So it's all about first impressions. And if you keep up with that on a regular maintenance program, now you're allowing that to be kept on top of, as opposed to maybe having an employee or a customer come in and say, we kind of need to clean this up a little bit. This is getting kind of gross. And whether people realize it or not, even if you're not one that notices those kinds of things, subconsciously you really do. And it puts this taste in your mouth, if you will, on what kind of service to expect. So take care of it in the front. Make sure your storefronts look good and your homes as well. It's the same thing. And keep on top of it and keep your customers happy and give them that great first impression.
Definitely. Can make a big difference for sure. So, I don't know. I mean, what's your most common kind of call these days? What are you seeing? And then maybe talk about how you're solving this issue for whoever's calling you out there for that.
The couple of the common ones, of course, people have pavers. Once they hear about it, they say, hey, I need to look at that. And you can get some calls from, if you do a driveway and people are driving by and they see it, now everybody else wants to do it. So that's one. And ironically, I've had a couple where it's people got a letter from the HOA saying they need to kind of clean up a little bit. So
I'm on my HOA, yes, that goes out once a year. It goes out in the spring. That's a busy time of the year, I'm sure, for you, right?
It can be, and the fall too. After all that rain going in the summer and the algae and mold growing, like you've been talking about, and the humidity, fall comes up and people start thinking about plans for the winter. And September, October, November, those are going to be kind of busy after summer's done. Kids aren't playing in the pool as much, and it's like, all right. And I hate it when people get those letters from the HOAs, but that's where we're here to help as well. We can take care of that.
That's for sure, right?
Yes.
On another note, guys, for those of you listening, if you like our show or think you'd make for a good guest, just wherever you can find podcasts, Property Pros Podcasts, just send us a message. We'll get you on the episode or make sure that you're a good fit. For those of you that are listening for the first time, like and subscribe so you can see more of our content. But Chris, we've talked so much about why it's important to seal your driveway or do regular cleanings to our businesses or our homes. But, when it comes to getting the bid from you or from somebody else, what's the differences between company X and company Y? Tell me. I don't know.
That's a really good question to ask, Peter. Many times, people are just looking for cost. And that's always a big thing, is people are looking for cheap. And I want to put it out there that if you want cheap, then you're probably not going to get quality. You can get quality at a good rate, but make sure you're paying the people for what they're doing. For example, in our industry, there's a national association called Powerwash of North America, and you can go through an entire program with them. It gives you certifications and training. Whether you need it or not, you can go through that program and say, hey, I'm a member of Powerwash of North America. And there's annual meetings that they have, as well as trade shows, to get the latest and greatest of what's trending in the business. So that's just something that differentiates, say, somebody like me from, no offense to anybody with the name, but like you're chucking a truck. It just says, I'm going to run down to Home Depot and pick up a pressure washer and throw down some Simple Green, and I'm going to call it a day. In addition to that, it's support for what you're doing. I've partnered up with, one of the chemicals that I use. It's a Trident product, and they have a whole surface assurance program. They have technical support. They actually have what they call a T3 university. And what this means to the customer at the end of the day is anybody working with a company like that or a product like that, they know that what's behind that is like an in-house chemical technology team to figure out which chemicals to use on these surfaces that are safe and effective. And they're training the people on how to go and use these properly. And to give you an idea of the kind of support that this company in particular does, and what's going to separate people like myself and people using people like that, is I did a job with a friend the other day, last week I think it was, and the product rep from the company came and met him on the job and was on the job for 2 days, step by step, walking through, making sure it was done the way that they wanted to ensure that the correct product was being used, it was being used properly, and all the choices and how to choose them and how to sell to the customer. This is stuff that guys can figure out on their own. But what I'm trying to say is if you want quality work, partner with somebody that has a team like this behind them to where you can be assured that you're going to get the best service and the best product possible. And if you are going to pay a little bit more for it, that's what you're paying for. You're paying for that quality and that done right promise, basically, and the ability to come back and take a look at it and make sure it is done properly. If you're not happy with the job, I'm going to come back and figure out what's going on. I'm not going to say, hey, good luck, take your money and run, because this is all about integrity, and that's what you want to know. Are you going to come back and check on me? After all this great product support and all the stuff that you're talking about, are you going to take my money and disappear, or can I call you with questions? Absolutely. Give us a call and we will do that. But whether it's us or somebody else, see what kind of credentials they have. Sometimes it's not always about how long they've been in business. I've seen people in lots of businesses for a really long time, and they're still cutting corners and going cheap. Look for somebody that's going to give you quality and the customer service and quality that you deserve to protect that major investment of a home that you have.
Isn't that the truth? Just because you've been doing it wrong for 20 years doesn't give you the right to tell us how to do it, right?
Way too much experience with that.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's really cool. I didn't know that. I mean, these are good questions to ask. I mean, one, difference between you and the next, and then the certifications, the product support. I mean, the manufacturer's rep coming out on the job site, that's a big deal. This is probably a sealant job, right? Is this to seal something?
Yeah, that was for a paver seal job, so there's a lot more like little details to it. And just to give you an idea too, I initially called like this one company to. There's a few main products, especially in the sealing world, that people use once you get into it. And it's like, okay, which one do you want to use? I called this one company and just asked, where do I get your product? Right? I was on the phone with the girl for 30 to 40 minutes. And she was like, oh, well, talking through all the products and how they use them and things to think about and so much information. And I was like, I literally just called to ask where to get your stuff. And she gave the best customer service. And she's like, that's exactly what we're there for. And to offer that a representative from the company who is also involved in some of the chemical composition of some of these products came to the job site to work with you. And then we have a local rep that for that and other products, the support that we have is absolutely amazing. We have a situation where even on this other job, there was a hole in a bag of sand, called him up, says, hey, a hole got punched in the sand and I need that sand. And they came and delivered it to the job site for free. So that's product support. That's efficiency support. And that is really taking care of customers at the end of the day, because that's what it's all about, is the customer. Getting in, doing your job, setting the expectations, and having that big support behind you to know how to take care of any and every concern.
That's awesome. Makes me want to run out right now and hire you to do my sealing on my back pool deck area. We hang out there all the time, swim. I like it to look good. It's just funny when I've had people come work on my house, like, oh, we'll work on the front yard, we'll make it tip top, and I'm like, I don't even hang out in the front yard. I'm always in the backyard. We're always swimming. And so I guess that's key, right? You got to figure out what's important to the person. But that's really cool. And that's great to know that there's these levels of differences. I know that's in our business, and I'm sure that's the way in every business, right? The differences in skill levels and knowledge levels, et cetera. And that air traffic controller background, pretty cool to be so technical in that. And you're applying those same habits and your skills to this business. So pretty neat.
Yeah, thank you very much. There's lots of things in life as you go, and you get surprised at how time goes on. Things that you've learned over time becomes transferable to so many places that you wouldn't even think it would. And you're like, hey, you know what? I learned this, and this actually applies here also. So.
Very cool. Very cool. Thanks so much, Chris, for being a part of this. I'm glad you were on.
Thank you, Peter, for the invite.
Glad you got to share your story. You know what? Let's tell, for those that are listening, just tell them how they can find you and how they can get a hold of you for their needs, for the sealants and the power washing services.
So we're in the Northeast Florida area around Jacksonville. The best way you can contact me would be you can call or text at 904-884-1716. That would be a great way. Or you can email me and either Chris at ProfessorPowerwash.com or sales at ProfessorPowerwash.com. And those are the best ways to get in touch, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for listening to this episode. Chris, you were great. I'm glad we got to hear what you do and hear how well you do it. So long, everybody. Until next time.